Geddis McFadden, and I'm originally from the Cottageville, South Carolina area, down in the Low Country near Charleston. I was 17 years old. My mother was shot and killed. She was shot and killed by her live-in boyfriend, who at the time had been around in our lives, I'd say about 10 years. And during that time period, he was pretty abusive to her. But as for me, I lived with my grandmother my entire life. My mother had me when she was 17. So I always stayed with my grandmother. And when she moved out, I continued to stay there. When I was 17, we lost her. She was taken from us in senseless gun violence. It was a crazy time because she had been through so much abuse with him. So he was just extremely abusive. And when she finally decided to leave him, she left unsafely. She decided to leave and made it clear to him that she was leaving and not coming back this time. And he had so many days to get out of her house because the house belonged to her that they lived in. And she went to my grandmother's house, but we were not at home because it was summertime and my grandmother had just taken us to one of her other daughter's houses to have a little break. And so when my mother stayed at our house, eventually she kind of ran out of food because my grandmother didn't get groceries because we knew we were gonna not be there. So she was going back to her house to get some food. When she did that, she realized that he and a lot of other people were partying in her house, and she asked them all to leave. And she was putting food in a bag in the kitchen when my three little sisters, who were 10, 11, and 12, ran around to the door and were screaming and yelling for her to tell her that he was coming with a gun. And he got to the big window that looked into her kitchen, and he just called her name. She turned around and he shot her in the forehead in front of my sisters. And it's something, of course, that they can never forget because they were splattered with their mother's blood. It was just gruesome, just terribly gruesome. And seeing her die in front of them was, if that wasn't bad enough, you know, all of our lives, especially mine, I went into the ministry. I'm a minister. I do counseling work. I volunteer for abused and neglected children. All of that centers around the lifestyle that my mother lived, because I want to make sure that other children do not have to live like that. And I want to make sure that women know that they can live, they can leave and live, but they just need to do it safely. If at least one person leaves and lives, then Patricia Ann Geddis, her life nor her death is in vain, because others have been saved, and children will not have to be victimized over and over and over again. I mentioned earlier that my three sisters were there when my mother died. And after she died, my grandmother took them in. I was 17, graduated from high school only a few days before that. And I decided to give up my scholarship. Instead of going to college, going to be one of the first people in our family to go to college. But I went into the military against my grandmother's wishes. But I told her that I needed to help her support my sisters. So I went into the Army and chose to be a police investigator with the Army. And it was very good, because the first day that I went to basic training, they gave me an allotment form to fill out. And probably I wasn't in the Army a week when my grandmother called and said she had a check. So that made it all worth it to me, because I was able to take some of the stress of taking care of them, you know, off of her. And every month she would get an allotment check to help to take care of them. And that was really good. Well, after I came out of the service, because ended up in Belgium at NATO, and I lived in Belgium for 3 years. And while I was there, my sisters were growing up, and I was trying very hard to teach them those same things. Don't be in abusive relationships. Don't allow it ever to even start. And these things won't reoccur in our lives. We can break the cycles of that abuse. And so they were very good about that. Well, right after I came home from the service, my middle sister, Sabrina, she found out that she was having a baby. So she moved into my house. I helped take care of her. And when she came from the hospital, she came home with me. And I had 4 sons by this time, married, 4 sons, traveled out of the service, going to college full time, a whole plate full. But I always have room for family. So Sabrina and her new baby came home to my house. I had 4 sons. My aunt by birth, but she's my sister in my heart because my grandmother raised us together. She had 4 sons as well. So that was 8 boys in a row in my family. When this baby girl was born, she was all of ours immediately from the beginning. And so we named her Sandy Patrice. And Sandy, she was sweet. She was just gentle, sweet, kind, loving child from the beginning. She had a little girl's voice, even as an adult. But she was kind. That kind of led to where we were when Sandy died, because Sandy, her cousins asked her to take them to Myrtle Beach, and her cousins didn't have a car, but Sandy had a car and a job, and she was a little bit older than some of them, and so she wanted to watch out for them because she was 22. And they drove to Myrtle Beach on a Saturday because the girls wanted to watch the motorcycle parades. It was Black Bikers Week in Myrtle Beach during Memorial Day weekend, and they wanted to just go up for the day. They were supposed to come back that night, and we didn't think it was any big deal. While they were up there, the young people got out of control, and they started fighting and shooting into the crowds. Running after people is the way we've been told. Young people were running everywhere. My other niece, she said she and Sandy got separated. Another young man, he pulled her under an SUV and held her there and wouldn't let her come out because the bullets were flying everywhere. Another little girl, Allison, who rode in the car with Sandy and Missy and them, said that the blood came down on her where this young man had laid her on the ground behind a dumpster, and he was partially laying on top of her to keep her safe, and said blood was rolling down on them from the bodies that were being hit. And 4 young people were shot that day. Sandy was shot in the forehead. Another young man, his name is Keith Williams, he was shot 5 times. There was another young man, his name was Jamie Williams, he was shot. Another young man, Devontae Dantzler, he was shot as well. Devontae and Jamie died at the scene. Devontae was 21 2 days before he went to the beach, and he went there to celebrate his birthday. He was his mother's only child, and we didn't know each other before all of this happened. But because all of our young people died together, now we all know each other. Right after Devontae got killed, we also found out that Jamie was a young father I was told that he had a 1 and 2 year old at the time of his death. And I always think it's so brutally sad because they will never remember their father. They will only know the stories that people have to tell because they're just so young. You know, I had 17 years with my mother, and there are things that I wish I could remember, you know, certain things that she cooked, how she cooked them, and I was standing there. And so having 17 years, I can't remember all the details. I know 1 and 2 years olds are not going to remember. That's another casualty of senseless gun violence. Right after Sandy was shot, a police detective got to her within a minute or two of her being shot. He had her transported to the hospital, and she was declared dead at the hospital. It was tragic for us because I got the phone call, and the phone call asked me, did Sandy have anything identifying on her? And she'd just gotten her first tattoo, which her auntie did not want her to have. And her auntie gave her a very difficult time about it. Anyway, but they're young and grown and beautiful, and they thought they had forever. But I told them about the tattoo that was on her thigh. And the coroner told me that it was her and that she did not make it. And I had to tell my sister that her only child had been shot and killed, and that she was not coming home from the beach. And it was extra tragic for us because she saw our mother die. She saw our mother shot in the forehead and killed in front of her. And now her only child, that's the part I didn't mention, Sandy is her only child, was shot and killed with a bullet in the forehead. It's been 6 years, and my sister still has days when she can't get out of the bed, and she can't get off the floor, and she can't stop crying. And it's difficult because we lost our mother one way and her only child. So it's been, for her, it's hard. But for me, it lit a fire. I had always been doing advocacy work for my community, for young people, for domestic violence, for children, abuse, neglect, families. But when they took Sandy, it started something new in me. It started a passion that I needed to save lives. I needed to make some changes because this has just gone too far. Too many young people dead for silly reasons, for no reasons actually, that they're not valuing life, that they're desensitized to the pain that they're causing, that I'm sure the young people that were on the beach have no idea that yesterday when my sister got off from work, well, last night around 11 o'clock p.m., when she got off from work, she had to call me so I could talk her home because she was crying so hard. They don't know. It's 6 years later, and that pain is still there because she said for some reason last night, she felt like, oh, when I get home, Sandy will be home right after me because Sandy used to come home around midnight. And she said then she realized Sandy was not coming home. It still happens 6 years later, and it's still happening. I wish they could see those days. I wish the young people that are not taking life seriously could listen in on those phone calls when I'm talking her home, or when she can't get out of bed and go to work, or when she can't eat for days because she can't keep anything down because she's just so distraught over losing her daughter. Those are the days I wish they could see the pain, the repercussions of their actions. I wish that they knew the impact of the choices that they make. Have been doing this work for 6 years since Sandy died. And immediately after Sandy died in May, and in June or July, I think, we went to DC on a bus. And on the bus, it was about 60 people that had lost loved ones to gun violence. And while we were there, we got a chance to meet with Leader Pelosi. And I had thought in advance, and I printed out pictures of Sandy that we had used in her memorial service. And I printed these pictures that said 22 years is all we got. We wanted more. We wanted a long lifetime with her, but 22 years is all we got because somebody took that choice away from us. I gave Leader Pelosi that picture, and she said, I will honor Sandy with action. Whenever I'm in DC, and I've been there many, many, many times since that day, I've testified to Congress, Senate, all kinds of people about gun violence. I've done interviews with tons of folks concerning gun violence, but I always think about that when I'm on the way to DC or when I see her on TV, because on my last trip to DC in December, I went to the Sandy Hook Vigil, and at the Sandy Hook Vigil, I was going to speak, and she was a speaker as well. I was sitting near her, and I gave her had orange beads and everything on it because she was wearing orange that night, and we knew in advance what she was going to be wearing, so we brought her one, and she put it on, and she mentioned it during her speech. And she grabbed my hand, and she said, Melody, I'm still honoring Sandy with action. Now, she doesn't remember my mother's name, but she hasn't forgotten Sandy's. Every time she sees me, when I'm in the hallway, we were in the hallway, and she and her whole group of people were coming down the hallway, and the police asked us to go to the side of the walls to let them all pass. When she got near us, she stopped, and she stopped them, and she came over and grabbed my hand. She said, I'm still honoring Sandy with action. And I appreciate that. That makes a difference to me. It makes what I'm doing still worth it, because she never met Sandy, but she's still honoring her by trying to get some safe, sensible gun laws passed. I'm a proud Army veteran. I was a military police investigator, carried a weapon every single day, well trained. I still go I still go to the range and practice sometimes. I still own a weapon. I don't have a problem with guns. None. I have a problem with guns in the wrong hands. I have a problem with guns in the hands of children. I have a problem with guns in the hands of criminals. I have a problem with guns in the hands of the mentally ill that are a danger to themselves or others. That's it. That's not unreasonable, in my opinion. That's pretty sensible. As long as you have a background check, you have training to use the weapon, I have no problem with you having a weapon. I have a problem with weapons that are stored unsafely so that children can access them. I have a problem with weapons because there are no accidental shootings. There are unintentional shootings, meaning you didn't intend for this to happen. But if you had stored your weapon properly, or stored the bullet somewhere else, or put a gun lock on the weapon, then nothing would have happened. There would have not been a shooting where a child could have accessed that. So that is a major difference that people need to understand. Just be smart. Be smart. before you even allow your kids or grandkids to go to somebody's house to play, ask them, do you have weapons? Are you storing them properly? Can the kids access them? And if they say, well, of course I got a weapon in my in my bedside table, say my kids are not coming there to play. That's just it, because you're not storing your weapon properly. And if they decide to get curious, as children do, and it's not their fault, they're born curious, then they can hurt themselves or others. And that's a lifetime of guilt that they will be carrying because an adult was unwise and didn't store their weapon properly. Think about that often. I've had many meetings with Senator Lindsey Graham and Senator Tim Scott. I've put pictures of my loved ones in front of them on the table between us in conference rooms. I've left pictures with them and with their aides in several meetings. And I've told them that there are ways. I'm a veteran. I don't have a problem with the Second Amendment. I was willing to give my life. I raised my hand and was willing to give my life so that you can have that right, so that you have every freedom that's afforded to you by the Constitution. I believe in the Second Amendment. I have a problem with people abusing that, to use it as a right to get weapons that they should not even have. There is no reason that automatic rifles like an AR-15 should be in the hands of a civilian that has no training on how to use one. I was trained. I know how to use it, but there is no reason for me to have one out here to go hunting. I live in the country. By the time you use an automatic weapon on a deer, you're not going to have any meat left. There are reasons that you should have weapons, and there are reasons that you shouldn't. Now, South Carolina has fallen down so many times on saving lives when we've had every opportunity to take advantage and do something preventative before a tragedy happens. See, when Sandy died at Myrtle Beach and 4 young people were shot, Senator Clemente Pinckney contacted us. We had a rally at in Summerville, South Carolina. He attended. It was all kinds of people there taking advantage of seeing 4 young people shot in their community and wanting to do something. We had peace rallies and vigils and walks and all kinds of things, but nothing changed. And then shortly thereafter, I'm sitting in the VIP section of Senator Clemente's funeral, because in such a sacred space as Mother Emanuel, to have people shot and killed at a prayer service, I never thought in my lifetime that I would see anything of that nature. Surely, South Carolinians will close the Charleston loophole, and we will do something about background checks. But again, nothing. I've actually had lawmakers say to me, I vote with the party. Well, here's my answer to I vote with the party. You may vote with the party, but the party didn't elect you. The people did. And if you represent the people, you should do what the people want. And 92% of the people want sensible background checks. That is not unreasonable. And if 92% of the people want you to have a background check before you purchase a weapon, it seems to me that's 1, 2, 3 normal. That should be ABC. Let's get this thing done. But instead, it's always politics. We need to stop playing politics. We need to stop sacrificing lives on the altar of politics and greed and division, and save lives. We really should. Because how many people are going to be sitting there 6 years later still crying over their dead kids because nothing was done by the politicians because they were playing politics? You know, how many people are going to be saying, I lost my mother to gun violence because this man should have never even had access to a weapon anyway, because he was a convicted felon, but he bought a weapon through a loophole, and therefore my mother might have been here today. Mm-hmm. If my mother had been here today, she might have seen me travel all over the world. She might have seen me giving interviews to save other lives. You know, she might have seen that she has grandchildren galore. She might have known that, I mean, it's just so much that she's missed. The happiest times of our lives are also the saddest times of our lives. You know, birthdays, weddings, graduations, all of that, because she's not here. She didn't see any of it because of senseless gun violence. I don't necessarily think that it would work in this country to have no weapons.
No.
I think if we had a better regulation system where they did the background check, where they were very tight on the background check, even if you sold it to your brother, he had to have a background check first before he bought your weapon.
Right.
You know, so what? If you can't pass a background check, then you don't need the weapon.
Right.
You know? I know that there were times right after Emmanuel happened where we asked the South Carolina legislature to give us a 7-day background check. And they said, no. 5-day background check. No. We're still at 3-day background check, which is crazy because we found out after Mother Emmanuel happened that on the 6th day, the background check came back for the killer, because his name is not worth mentioning. No notoriety. But if more time on the 6th day, if we had 7 days, then maybe, just maybe, that would have saved those 9 lives. And maybe it will save others in the future. People that are supposed to get the weapons on the 7th day, if your background check is clear, get your weapon. If you can't wait 7 days, then maybe you have something else going on that somebody else needs to look into. Maybe a mental health expert or somebody else. Because if you can't wait a week for a weapon, something else is wrong. Maybe you don't have the right intentions. To fight it. We will not go away. We will not go away. We will never quit. If it's one thing that you can be sure of, this shirt says it all. Moms. Moms don't quit. Moms don't stop. Moms don't go away. They don't give up. Especially not when it concerns keeping our families safe. There is no way that we're going to stand by and let that happen. So we're going to fight and fight and fight until we have something resolved, because it's ridiculous. And South Carolina, I am one of these people that go out of my way. I went to a funeral last week. I had an aunt that passed down in the Low Country. And while I was at this funeral, it was graveside and everything, which is unusual, but it's the times, it's the days of COVID. And so some young girls that have grown up now were telling me that they're here in the Greenville area in college. And I said, well, wow, wonderful. Y'all can come by and have a meal sometimes and everything. But I said, you can't get in my yard unless you've registered to vote. You are being locked out of the yard. You can't pass. You need a swipe. And the way you get in the yard is you have to be registered to vote. And they were like, are you serious? I said, I am serious. You need to register to vote. And so I found out just by playing with them at first that 2 of them were not registered to vote. So we took out our phone and we wrote vote to 64433 so we can start them getting registered right then and there. Because we have to change something. And like I told them, if the people that are in office at this time will not do something sensible to change laws, to save lives, to protect our families and the people of this state and country, then we should vote them out. They need to look for another job. Go play politics with somebody else's life, because you are not going to play with our children's lives. We're not going to stand by and take it. We will go door to door and vote you out with masks and gloves on if that's what it takes. But you're going to have to do your job or look for one. That's just all it is to it. If you were elected to represent us, then listen to us. Hear us. Us, the people, not them, the party. Mm-hmm. Because them, the party, are out for their own self-interest, their own greed, their own politics. Just save lives. Do what you said you were going to do when you got elected. Stop lying to the people to get a job. When you make promises, keep them. If you can't keep them, which sometimes you just can't, because there are things that get in the way. Explain it. Say, I could not do this because this happened, this happened, this happened. Stop lying. And then I really believe people have to stop falling for the lies. Stop re-electing people just because they've always been in office. Well, if they've always been in office and they've never done anything for us, they've only been taking care of themselves, it's time for them to go. It's time for them to go. We need some people that are going to do what they say, mean what they say, and get it done. Otherwise, bye. Look for another job. I wanted to mention one more person. See this bracelet I have on? We got this, and this bracelet actually has 6 names on it. And that's the people that I stomp for. That's what I call it, because I keep boots on the ground. That's what I call it, advocacy work. Mm. And it has my mother's name on it, Patricia Ann. It has Sandy, and then it has L'Oreal. L'Oreal was from Greenville, South Carolina. She was 18 years old and a twin, identical twin. She and her twin, the grandparents were raising them and let them go to Chicago for their 18th birthday because they wanted, that's where they were originally from. And that's what they wanted. They went up to Chicago, and shortly after their birthday, spring break, I think it must have been. It had to be spring break. But anyway, while they were there, they were going to a convenience store. One of the twins, Lauren, was driving, and L'Oreal was in the passenger seat. When they pulled up to the convenience store, they stepped out, and then they heard gunshots. They immediately turned around, started running back for the car. They got in the car. When they got in the car, Lauren says L'Oreal puts her head on her shoulder. And she said, Elle, I'm trying to drive. You got to sit up. What are you doing? I'm trying to get us out of here. And L'Oreal says, don't forget. And she said, Elle, I'm trying to drive. What are you doing? And she said, I love you, I love you, I love you. That was their twin thing. They used to argue. They used to have fun. They used to fight. And then all of a sudden they start saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. And the other one would just turn around and say, I love you, I love you, I love you. And then it was over. It was their little thing. And so she just kept saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. So she didn't understand. She pulls the car over because she got quiet and she wasn't saying it anymore. And she'd been shot in the back of the head. That day in Chicago, 8 people were shot on 6 blocks. Nobody was arrested. They think gang members were trying to get into the gangs and had to kill people in order to do it. This young lady was 18. She'd already been to Brazil and Mexico with the youth group to do missionary work. She had written some poetry and short stories, and she was saying all the things she wanted to do to change the world and fix the world. And she's not here anymore. It's people like her. That's the reason why we have to make sensible gun laws so that these young people can change the world, so that they can be here, so that they don't have to be memories and names on bracelets and t-shirts and that sort of thing. It sometimes breaks my heart that I gotta look at this bracelet that has my mother's favorite color and Sandy's favorite color and my sister's favorite color and different ones on this bracelet, because I always say, well, this is one bullet that will not kill someone. Mm-hmm. This one bullet has saved a life. And so it reminds me to keep going, keep going, keep going. There's an organization out of Miami called Bullets for Life. Susan Kennedy started it when a child in her neighborhood was killed. And she started collecting bullets from gang members, from people in the neighborhood who said they kept the guns just to protect their house or whatever. She said, well, give me one bullet. And they said, why do you want one bullet? Because that's one bullet that will not kill somebody. And she took it and repurposed it, made necklaces or bracelets or other things, so that that's one bullet that saves a life. Mm-hmm. So we have started South Carolina Bullets for Life so that we can save lives here too. When we just recently went to a young man's birthday memorial service, and everybody out there had on masks, and we were listening to his mother cry and remember Damani, and she let some doves go and everything. It just broke my heart because I saw her bracelet and she said, I wish the bullet that took my son, I just wish it had never been made. Mm-hmm. And I saw her bullet on her bracelet flashing in the sunlight when she was releasing the dove. And I said, I understand. I wish the bullet that took my loved ones had never been made, you know, but we're going to take the bullets that we can gather and we're going to save lives. We're going to do whatever we can. We're going to take the bullets and save lives. We're going to change laws and save lives. We're going to get young people on the path to get them activated, motivated. We're going to get other people to send text messages, phone bank, do whatever you have to do. I've been with moms for 6 years. I'm a South Carolina Faith Outreach Lead for the whole state, which means I'm a minister, as I said. So I try to reach out to everybody of faith to let them know that we can all work together. We can all work together. As long as we are saving lives, then we're speaking the same language. That's all we want to do. And it's been very successful in that aspect. I'm also a senior survivor fellow, meaning survivor. A survivor is a part of the Everytown Survivor Network, meaning you've lost a loved one to gun violence, or you've witnessed gun violence or seen or heard somebody that you care about taken in senseless gun violence. And as a survivor fellow, it means I'm willing to tell my story. And I've been telling that story now for 6 years. Before Sandy was taken, I only told it in the domestic violence realm. And then after Sandy was taken, I had to tell it here. I tell it about my mother. Don't forget Patricia Ann. Don't forget Sandy Patrice. Don't forget L'Oreal. Don't forget Corey G. Don't forget Joshua. Don't forget Louie. Don't forget all of these young ones that have been lost to senseless gun violence. One of the most tragic days of my life was when I turned 34 years old. And people say, what? It was the worst birthday of my life because I was the age that my mother was when she died. Mm-hmm. And she never got to see 35. And here I am, the same age as she was. Now, I'm much older than what she was because I'm in my 50s. And she never went beyond 34. Mm-hmm. So I can't even imagine what she would have looked like. That is what a bullet took away from us. That is what the killer took away from us. We don't know her as anything except 34. Just recently, when we had that family funeral last week, and my sister was sitting there, and one of the young ladies that grew up with Sandy from birth always played, and they did everything together and everything, and she came in, and she had a baby. She's 28 years old now. Sandy would have been 28. Okay, this young lady had a baby in her arms. And my sister was just looking at her, shaking her head. Because I know she was imagining Sandy could have been having a baby in her arms by now, 28 years old. But all we're ever going to know is 22 years is all we got. I was in Phoenix, Arizona in February. We had the Veterans Advisory Council for every town. They selected 25 people from across the country, including a person from Alaska and Hawaii. We all met in Phoenix, and we were trying to put together some legislative initiatives and ideas so that they would know how we feel as veterans. Because, of course, like I said, we don't have a problem with weapons. We all went to the range together while we were in Phoenix, so we don't have a problem with weapons. But when we were there, a lady said to me, because she was sitting beside me, and she said, you gun crazies need to stop trying to take everybody's gun. And so I looked at her. I said, oh, I don't want your gun. I have my own. So I don't want yours. I have mine, and I'm good with that. I said, I just don't want the wrong people to have them. She said, well, you can't save everybody. I said, but if I save one, it'll make a difference. She said, oh, one won't change anything. I said, want to bet? I said, it would have changed everything for my sister, because that one was her only child. That one means she's never going to have another one. That one says she's never going to have grandchildren. That one ended her next legacy. So you think one won't make a difference? It'll make a difference to her. And it definitely makes a difference to me. And she looked at me really funny, and I just opened my phone and showed her Sandy's picture. I said, this one would have made a difference. And she said, I'll never say that again. That's what I think we're going to have to do to people, to let them know one makes a difference. When I'm together with a lot of survivors and we're all talking and there are people crying and things going on, a lot of times somebody will say it. What if it was their kid? What if it was their mother? What if it was their dad? I bet you they do something then. But then I always say, but I don't want it to be their mom or their dad or their daughter or son, because I really don't even want them to know what this feels like every single day, because if they know, then a life has been lost. This club that we belong to, we don't want new members. We want to end the membership drive. We want to lock the door and say, no, you cannot come in. Because in order to come in, the price is too steep. The price is you have had to have someone that you love taken in senseless gun violence. So no, you cannot enter, because we don't want you to know what it's like to be here on this side of the door. Mm-hmm. Even them that are not doing their jobs, that are not protecting the people, that are not making sensible gun laws, not crazy gun laws, just gun laws, background checks, closing the Charleston loophole, sensible gun laws. That's all we're asking. Even them, I don't want them to understand what it's like to walk in these shoes every day. I don't want them to know, because someone will have had to given their lives for them to understand. The price is too steep. It costs too much.
Melody, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for honoring my loved ones with action.